So in this experimental method, what we do is that we take the meter readings, and the typical meter readings which we get during this experiment, they are as follows. So you can note down these readings if you want. So you'll find that the initial reading and final reading, ultimately, if you take and if you use the energy meter constant, if you like, there are two methods actually. One is you note down the initial reading and final reading, and then you divide it by time. Now, what I had done when I had performed the experiment is I had used some other method of determination of kilowatt power consumption, which I would just explain you in a while. Compressor power, I told you that it could be determined as the final kWh reading minus initial kWh reading upon time, or it could also be determined from the energy meter constant, wherein we record energy meter constant is nothing but how much rotations of that disk, if it is a disk type of energy meter, or if it is a pulse type of energy meter, how many pulses are required, okay, for that energy meter to record 1 kWh of power energy. So that is called as the energy meter constant. So when you calibrate the energy meter is fixed. Okay, calibration means what? When you are actually measuring a known quantity of energy, 1 kWh, then you record the number of pulses for that 1 kWh. So for this energy meter, which is in our lab, the energy meter constant is 1200. Okay, so you can take down the energy meter constant for the compressor. The unit of it is the energy meter constant. Energy meter constant for this compressor compressor meter is 1200. Okay, revolutions per kilowatt hour. Okay, it means that when that revolutions, when the disk rotates 1200 times, or even if there are no disk, but if it's pulses, you can say pulses or blinks of the light which is there on the energy meter. If there are 1200 pulses, then it would mean that the energy meter has read 1 kWh of energy. Okay, you need to be very clear on energy and power. Energy's unit is kilowatt hour, and when you are talking about the power consumption, its unit is kilowatt. Okay, so now if we want to find that, then what you need to do is that you need to record instead of kWh initial and kWh final, because you are given the energy meter constant, you can record the time for 10 or 100 or whatever pulses or revolutions which are necessary. Okay, once you record the time for 10 pulses, let us say, and in our case what we get is it is about 1.12. Let me just check the okay, it is we had recorded that, and it was in seconds, it was 112 seconds. So what, how do you do that? You just stand in front of that energy meter and just count, you use a stopwatch and record the time for 10 pulses. So that would be 112 seconds for the setup which we have. So then you can find the compressor work using the expression number of revolutions or number of pulses into 3600, because 1 hour is 3600 seconds. 1 hour is 3600 seconds. That is the reason why you are multiplying it with 3600 upon energy meter constant, which is 1200 revolutions per kWh, and the 3600 is seconds per hour. Okay, into 112 seconds. So this would give us, if you look at the units also carefully, you would find that the unit of this would be kilowatts. This would be kilowatts. So what we found was, by substituting these values as 1200, 112 and 10, we got the power consumption of this as about 0.2678, about 0.2678 0.78. Okay, is this clear? The measurement of the calculation of power consumption. Okay, what do you do for measuring the power consumption? We note down the time for 10 pulses, and then in our case, in our lab, when we took the readings last time, we got that time for 10 pulses as 112 seconds. We note down that time. I told you that other method is you take the initial kWh reading and the final kWh reading and the duration of that. Okay, that could also be done, but now because I have the readings for the time for 10 pulses, and I also have the value of energy meter constant, which is 1200 revolutions per kWh, I can straight away find the power consumption as number of revolutions into 3600 upon 1200 into 112, which comes to 0.2678 kilowatts. Okay, so this gives me the power consumption by experimental method. How do you calculate the refrigerating effect by experimental method? For calculating the refrigerating effect by experimental method, we know that we have the known mass of water. So in our case, we had taken about 24 kgs, about 24.2 kgs of water in that container. Okay, so the mass of the water taken was 24.2. To be precise, it was 24.26. Okay, what do we do is that we take a known calibrated beaker, and you know that 1 kg is 1 liter. Okay, and you pour that water into that container, and you see how much is the water which can be occupied in that container. Okay, and in that container, you know that the evaporator coils are immersed. Okay, that would result in cooling of this water, which is 24.26, and you know the specific heat of the water is 4.187, and the temperature drop which we recorded in our lab was from 24, it dropped to 22. Okay, so there was a drop of 2 degrees centigrade, and the time of conducting this experiment was about 30 minutes. Okay, so we conducted this experiment for 30 minutes, which is 30 into 60 seconds. Okay, and then you will understand that because the unit of this is kilojoules per kg Kelvin, the unit of this would be kilojoules per second. Okay, because the denominator is in seconds now, right? So this, if you solve, and you'll get the value as, and I had got the value as 0.1128 kilojoules per second, or which is kilowatts. Okay, so this way we calculated the coefficient of performance experimentally, and we found that the coefficient of performance was the ratio of refrigerating effect upon power consumption. The refrigerating effect we got as 0.1128, and the power consumption we got as 0.2678. 0.2678. Both the units are in kilowatts, and so if you solve this, you'll get the coefficient of performance of this refrigeration setup as 0.421. 0.421. So this is what we got in our lab. Okay, so this is one of the findings, that the coefficient of performance of the refrigeration setup calculated by measuring the actual power consumption of the compressor, and by measuring the refrigerating effect, by measuring the cooling effect of the water which was kept in the evaporator tank, that gives us the coefficient of performance as 0.421. Okay, the what is the capacity? Capacity, if you want to express it in tons, you need to divide this by the refrigerating effect by 3.517, and you will get the capacity in tons. 0.28 upon 3.517 would give us the capacity in tons of refrigeration. The power consumption is already known. We need to use the compressor operating about 0.26 kilowatts. Okay, so this is the first part of the experiment where we calculate the performance by taking actual measurements of the power consumed using the energy meter, and by calculating the actual refrigerating effect by measuring the temperature drop of the water in the evaporator tank. Okay. The other method of arriving at the performance is using some analysis and property tables, that is the pressure enthalpy diagram. Okay. The pressure enthalpy diagram of R134A has to be used because the refrigerant used in this system is R134A. This is a vapor dome, and for plotting this diagram, we need to record the suction pressure, which is the evaporator pressure, and we need to record the discharge pressure, which is the condenser pressure. So our readings, let me share the readings which we have got. Our readings which we had for the evaporator, that value is about, let me see, yeah, that value which we got as a gauge reading was 0.981. It was 1 kg of per centimeter square, which is nothing but 0.981 bar. Okay. Now this mind well is the gauge reading, so we need to convert it into absolute. So let me convert it into absolute by adding the atmospheric pressure. So 1.013 plus 0.981, that gives me the suction pressure, which if you calculate that, you would get it as 1.9942. Okay. So just convince yourselves by calculating it is 1.9942 bar. Okay, so if you know that, and if you have the pressure enthalpy chart in front of you, you can draw this line, which should represent a 1.9942 bar. Similarly, we need to get the discharge pressure or the condenser pressure. So the condenser pressure recorded from the pressure gauge, we got about 10 kg of per centimeter square, which is obviously 10 into 0.981 bar, which is 9.81 bar. This is the gauge pressure, and we need to convert it into absolute pressure. So if you want to convert it into absolute pressure, as you know, it has to be added to the atmospheric pressure, and that is what we get. The value I have with me is 10.623. Okay, you can convince yourselves by doing these calculations on your own. And once I get the condenser pressure, I can easily plot it on the pressure enthalpy diagram here. So let us say this is the pressure which I was looking for, corresponding to 10.623, okay, bar. So now I have got two lines. What you do is that in the first calculation, in the first approximation, we assume it to be a saturation cycle. So the point 1 would be on the saturation curve, and I draw a isentropic from 1 to 2. Then I don't consider subcooling. So this is on the saturation curve 3, and this would be a vertical 4. Okay. So how do you get one? The intersection of this line, that is 1.9942 line, with the saturation curve, the G line, this is called as the G line. That intersection of G line with the evaporator pressure line is your 1. If you do this on the pressure enthalpy diagram, you can locate the point 1, and once you locate the point 1, you can read the value of enthalpy from the pH diagram. So the value which I have, let me share that value with you all. That value which I have from the refrigeration tables or from the pH diagram is 392.66. So you can convince yourselves. You can use your own tables or your own pH diagram and see whether you are also getting the same value, right? Then what you can do is that you can draw isentropic, that is, you can follow the constant entropy curve from 1 and this isentropic line should intersect the condenser pressure line. We have already drawn the condenser pressure line. Allow it, extend it beyond this vapor dome. This condenser pressure line would intersect the constant entropy line emerging from 1. So if you draw a constant entropy line from 1, it would intersect the condenser pressure line, and that would give us the point 2. And if you read that value comes to, in my case, I got that value H2 as about 430 kilojoules per kg Kelvin. Okay, 430 kilojoules per 430 kilojoules per kg. Okay. Now how do you find the specific compressor work? So finding the specific compressor work means you need to subtract H2 minus H1. Okay, so we'll come to that later, but let us figure out how much is H3. Okay, so H3, you look at the pH diagram. So H3 is on this F line. This is the F line. And how do you locate the point 3? Allow this condenser pressure line to intersect, the F line. Where the condenser pressure line intersects the F line, that becomes your point 3. And read from the pH diagram straight away the value of enthalpy. So the value of enthalpy from the pH diagram, once you have located point 3, which enthalpy will be equal to H4, that value which I have got is about 259.88. 259.88. Okay, so this is how I have got the values of H1, H2, H3 and H4. And if you use these values, the COP would be, the coefficient of performance would be the enthalpy difference across the compressor upon the enthalpy difference across the evaporator, the refrigerating effect, upon the compressor work, means delta H across the compressor. Now delta H across the evaporator means what? H1 minus H4. Okay, would be H1 minus H4, and across the compressor means H2 minus H1. So putting these values, okay, as H1, H2, H3, H4, what you get is, you get the coefficient of performance as 3.5, about 3.5. Okay, you can convince yourselves. If you are getting a different answer, let me know. So H1, I have the value. H1 as 392.66, H2 is 430 point something, H3 is 259.88, and it is equal to H4. So knowing this values, if you put these values, you will get the COP of the VCR cycle. And but this COP is by assuming that the cycle is a saturation cycle. So though we have used the actual readings of the condenser pressure and the evaporator pressure, however, this calculation is not exact because we have assumed the cycle to be a saturation cycle. Okay, so this is the COP of VCR cycle found by assuming it to be a saturation cycle. What was the COP found earlier? You look at the COP found earlier, which was very less. That COP was, let me see the value. .267. Sorry, that COP is 0.421 experimentally. Okay, and now what you get is, by assuming it as saturation cycle, you have got the COP as 3.52. Okay, we are also interested in knowing the capacity, refrigerating effect, and for knowing the refrigerating effect or the capacity, okay, what we need to do is that we need to multiply the mass flow rate of the refrigerant with the enthalpy difference across the evaporator, because that is what is the refrigerating effect. Okay, mass flow rate of the refrigerant into the enthalpy difference across the evaporator would give us the refrigerating effect. Now, how do you find the mass flow rate? Okay, that is very interesting. For finding the mass flow rate, we need to use the flow meter reading. The flow meter gives us the readings in LPH. So we had the flow meter reading, and that value we obtained was about 24 LPH. L for liters per hour. Okay, 24 liters per hour. If you convert it into meter cube per second, how do you convert it into meter cube per second? So multiply this into 10 raised to minus 3, that gives us meter cube, and to convert it into seconds divided by 3600, that gives us the flow meter reading, which is V. Okay, which is the volume flow rate VF. Volume flow rate VF. Now this flow meter is located at the state 3. Flow meter is located at the state 3. So we need to know the specific volume at the state 3 if you want to find the mass, because you know that for finding the mass you need to divide the volume with the specific volume. Okay, volume with the specific volume. So from the pH diagram or even from the refrigeration tables, one can read the specific volume of the refrigerant at the given pressure. What is the given pressure? That is at the condenser pressure. Actually, you need to do some interpolation, but I would simply write down the value, assuming that the interpolation is done. We won't get directly the value of VF3 from the refrigeration tables, or but if you have the pH chart, then you can get the values directly. Okay. So that values, the value with V, which I have is 8.8 into 10 raised to minus 4 meter cube. This is the specific volume. Okay, and this unit is the total volume, which is meter cube. This is meter cube per kg. Meter cube per kg. Right. So once you get this, you can find the mass flow rate. So divide this VF by VF3, and you'll get the mass flow rate. And that value you can check, because the VF is V3 is 6.67. This comes as, if you solve this VF, 24 into 10 raised to minus 3 upon 3600. The answer I have is 6.67 into 10 raised to minus. Just do the calculations of convince yourself. I guess it is 10 raised to minus 6, whatever. Okay, and you have this values, and from that you will get the mass flow rate. The value of the mass flow rate I will directly write down, and that value with me is 7.57 into 10 raised to minus 3. Okay, kgs per second. Kgs per second. So this mass flow rate, how do we find? For finding the mass flow rate, we use the flow meter reading. We find the specific volume at the state 3, which is the outlet of the condenser, from the pH diagram or from the refrigeration tables, and then divide that total volume by the specific volume, so that you get the mass flow rate in kgs per second. Okay. If you do it this way and multiply it with the enthalpy difference across the evaporator, the capacity which I have got was around 1 kilowatt. Okay. So this multiplication, you get the value which is approximately 1 kilowatt. So this is the refrigerating effect obtained by assuming the cycle to be a saturation cycle. But whether the cycle is saturation cycle, no. Before that, how do you calculate the power consumption? So for doing the power consumption, again, just multiply the delta H of the compressor with the mass flow rate, and you will get the power consumption. So that reading with me is about 0.28. Okay. So convince yourselves by doing this on your own. So 0.28 kilowatt is the power consumption I have got, and the refrigerating effect I have got it as 1 kilowatt, and that gives me the COP of 3.5. Okay. But this was by assuming the cycle to be a saturation cycle. But you know that the cycle is not a saturation cycle. It would have some suction superheating, it would have some subcooling, and it would have some pressure drops, slight pressure drops in the heat exchangers. So let me try to construct this actual cycle on the pressure enthalpy diagram. So this would be, let us say, the actual evaporator pressure line. It is not ending now on the saturation curve. It is ending beyond the saturation curve, meaning that there is some suction superheating, and there is some compression line. Then there will be some subcooling. Okay, and this is how we get the line H1, H2, H3, H4, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. When we recorded the readings, what we got was this T1. We obtained the value as 23 degrees centigrade, and this T3 we obtained the value as 28 degrees centigrade. 28 degrees centigrade. Okay. Obviously, this value would be the saturation temperature corresponding to evaporator pressure, and this value would be saturation temperature corresponding to condenser pressure. Okay. Now, you can also measure this value, which is the value of the temperature at the outlet. Okay. And this value we got was 40 degrees centigrade, and this value we got was 21 degrees centigrade. So note that when you are having such values, you won't be getting the actual cycle as an ideal cycle. It would be an actual cycle, meaning there won't be an isentropic process. The pressure won't remain constant in the condenser and evaporator, right? And there won't be a saturation point. The starting point would be a saturation point. So you would have some suction superheating, you would have some subcooling, and you would have such kind of cycle. So if you read the enthalpies again from the pressure enthalpy diagram, I will give you the typical values which I have got. This H1 was 425. Just plot this and read it from the pH chart. H2 I have the value as 485. All in kilojoules per kg. H3 is 240 kilojoules per kg, and in ideal case H3 is equal to H4, but in this case H3 and H4 are not same because it is not the actual, it is not the ideal cycle, it is actual cycle. Okay, so this will give us some typical readings. These are the typical readings which I have, and then once you get the enthalpy, the other things remain the same. You can use the same mass flow rate which you have got. The mass flow rate was obtained from the flow meter reading. So that mass flow rate is 7.57 into 10⁻³ right? So using this, we can again use the same method of calculating the refrigerating effect as mass flow rate into enthalpy difference across the evaporator, which is H1 minus H4, where now you have a different value of H1 and H4. The power consumption of the compressor, m dot into H2 minus H1. Again, we have a different value of H2 and H1. So if you want, you can use some other terminology, like for example, you can call this 1 dash, 2 dash, 3 dash, 4 dash. So this is 1 dash, 2 dash, like this. Okay. Whatever. Just to differentiate the saturation cycle from the actual cycle. And if you do these calculations, the values which I have, the answer which I have is, this is approximately 1.48. This refrigerating effect has increased. Earlier it was 1 kilowatt, but because of suction superheating, you get some different value over here. And the power consumption is 0.4602. Again, because this is the actual cycle, this power consumption would be greater than the saturation cycle. Okay, and the COP is 3.2. Coefficient of performance is 3.2. Okay, this is how we need to do the calculations, and then finally one can write the result table. The result table would look like this. For example, the result table would be like the saturation cycle, then actual cycle, and then the experimental cycle. Okay, experimental readings. So the refrigerating effect, what you get? The power consumption and the COP. For example, when you are assume the cycle to be saturation cycle, we had got the refrigerating effect as 1 kilowatt. This was about 0.28 kilowatts, and this was about 3.5. Okay, and when you do the actual cycle, the refrigerating effect increases from 1 to 1.48 kilowatts. The power consumption also increases from 0.28 to 0.46, and then the coefficient of performance would reduce a bit from 3.5 to 3.23. But when you do it experimentally, and because you have the meters, which we don't know whether they are very accurate, right? And because you are using a crude technique of determining the refrigerating effect, so you get a different value, much more different than what you get by the analysis. So this is, you see that quite a low value of refrigerating effect, and the power consumption, probably this is the underestimate, and this is closer to the reality because here you are using the meter, and because this is an underestimate. Okay, if you want to have an accurate value over here, you need to do the experiment for quite a significant time. Okay, and then this gives us a COP of 0.42. So this is the result table from which you can conclude. Like, what do you conclude? We can say that look at these values, you would find that the coefficient of performance of the cycles, they are pretty different when you do the analysis from the different methods, and that has to do with the accuracy of the observations, and that has also to do with the cycles. For example, the saturation cycle would obviously yield us more refrigerating effect because that would give us a higher enthalpy at the inlet of the compressor. The power consumption would also be more in the actual cycle because the process won't be isentropic as in the saturation cycle, and hence the delta H across the compressor will be more because there will be friction in the compressor, and the coefficient of performance would accordingly change. So this is how you need to comment depending upon what observations you have. Because this is the experiment, so we don't have a set of conclusions, one fixed set of conclusions in our mind. We need to look at the table values. We need to look at our readings. If we are not convinced, we need to repeat the experiment. That is how the experimentation is done. Okay. But because this is simply a demonstration, so what generally we do is that we take one set of values, one set of readings, arrive at some values, put them in the result table and comment. But that is not how the experimentation is done. And the real life experimentation, we need to be very rigorous about the calibration of the equipment. We need to be very rigorous about the set of readings that we take, and then we need to use some statistical tools to arrive at the average refrigerating effect, average power consumption, and then the average this way. Okay. So this is about today's lecture. Using this analysis which I have explained and using the video which was prepared on this setup, you should be in a position now to write the complete writer of this experiment on the compression distribution testing. Thanks a lot.